I was live on my Twitter. Can we just start all over again?
So you have to love modern technology, Rick. We literally did 10 minutes of the show before realizing that our broadcast had ended. So we're just going to reboot it. I mean, you and I are the only two people that know. Now everybody knows. So let's be transparent. Welcome in. I'm Tony Altieri. That is Riku Mukherjee. This is the DFS Jags PGA golf podcast show, whatever you want to call it. We are live. Thank you very much. We are talking British Open. And Rick, like we talked about in the precursor rehearsal show, you are 3 out of 4, man. 3 weeks in a row, or I should say 3 of the last 4 weeks, you have hit outright winners on Fitzpatrick and Xander, as well as JT Poston. And so we're looking to keep the magic going as we head into the final major of the year.
Yeah, man. A little bit of a heater right now, taking it into the final major of the year. Hopefully we can get another winner. Hopefully you can get a winner also. I think you've been a little
nice, dude. I have been on a hell of a dry spell. A bunch of top 5s and number 2s, which pay nothing in the outright markets. But DraftKings has been good.
Yeah, that's always good. So yeah, I mean, I got some guys that I'm leaning in on this week, and it was nice to hit Xander last week. He seems to be the hottest player on the planet. I wanted to ride that lead in form with him from his win. I was kind of mad I missed out on him at the Travelers a couple weeks ago. He's one of those guys where I was scared to always bet him because he never wins, but apparently he can't lose now. So, he's won 3 in a row, including if you include the little pro-am that they had at the JP McManus a couple weeks ago. And yeah, man, this is exciting. It's the 150th Open at St. Andrews, the old course, probably one of the nicest courses on the face of the planet. Tiger's favorite course on the planet. He's going to be playing this week, so it's all very exciting. And it's the last major we have for 9 months, so it's a time to try to win some money. There's great prize pools on DraftKings. Time to win some money in the betting market. And yeah, man, it's an exciting time. Overnight golf is always a little tough on the body and sleep, but we'll be waking up in the wee hours with some coffee and watching some golf.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for us on the West Coast, like we talked about. Most of the action is going to happen while we're in bed, but for degenerates like you and I, we'll be waking up early or staying up late and watching a good portion of the tournament before we jump into this week's British Open, or the Open Championship as it's more properly called. But for SEO value, we do say British Open because that's what most people here in the States call it. I'd like to remind everybody to like, subscribe, and comment on the video and become a member of the Nickel City Mafia YouTube channel. We're at 500 subscribers, and we quickly want to get to 1,000. So we thank everybody that's got us to that point now. And we're excited about talking about one last major of the PGA season, but a lot of other dynamics happening. This major will feature for the first time a number of the defectors, the guys who have left and gone to the LIV Tour. And for you and I, somewhat of it is golf, right? Like we enjoy watching the guys we like to watch play, regardless of what tour we're on. At the same point in time, it feels like the LIV is the bad guy tour. It's the 4-letter word in golf. And you've got a number of these guys that are now playing in a tournament, obviously in a major, for the first time since LIV has launched. And I'm curious, like, what kind of dynamics or aspects do you think this brings to the British Open? Like, is there animosity? Is there hatred? Like, how do you think this all plays together? Is it a good thing or a bad thing for these LIV guys that have been playing on this tour now for 2 or 3 events?
After hearing what Tiger had to say, I don't know if you saw his comments from yesterday, but he pretty much, slammed the door on the LIV guys. He said, like, they're basically fake golfers that like don't care about practice and all they care about is money. I think there's little bit of animosity between the guys. I'm not really sure. I think when they're out there, it's not that big of a deal, but I think behind the scenes, there's a little bit of animosity, obviously from players like Rory and Tiger, and they made public comments about it. But it is nice to have a tournament. It looks like moving forward, it's going to be 4 times a year where all the big names get together and play it out for 72 holes and see who's the best golfer. And it creates it creates an interesting dynamic for us in the DFS community, because it looks like we're never going to get a popular live golfer ever again on in DFS. It looks like every major tournament it's going to be low ownership for these live guys. So if you can stomach playing them in DraftKings, you're definitely going to be leveraged to the field. You can get overweight on guys like Patrick Reed and Dustin Johnson and Taylor Gooch and not have to play them much in your lineups. You can get pretty overweight pretty fast on these guys. And it creates an interesting dynamic for DFS and stuff like that. And I don't mind it. It is what it is. I would like to see obviously them work things out in the future, and I would like to see things come to a head at some point. But it doesn't look like that's going to be anytime soon. And who knows, man? Slowly but surely next year, if the live tournaments don't get these OWGR points, these guys aren't going to be eligible to play in majors. The guys that are playing on the live tour, like Louis, like that don't have exemptions from winning majors, like Phil and Brooks and DJ do. But people like Louis and Taylor Gooch, like these guys aren't going to be able to qualify for majors. So who knows? This might be like the last major where all these guys are going to play together, but I don't know. We'll see. What do you think?
It's interesting. I would say that, I've been fairly consistent in just saying that I'm always pro competition, right? Because I feel like competition breeds a certain level of not desperation, but it forces you to try and do new things. I mentioned it before, the parallels with the XFL and the NFL. I don't think there was any in anyone's imagination that the XFL in any way, shape, or form would eclipse what the NFL was doing. But there were things that the XFL incorporated into their broadcast and into the game that the NFL has now since adopted because it was a good idea. And so I think the Live Tour, what I'm hoping comes out of it is that it creates some dynamics where the PGA can be like, that worked. We didn't have to test it. It worked at the Live Tour. We can try these things. I don't know what those are at this point in time. I don't know if the shotgun start is something that will be broadly accepted across, what the PGA does or the DP World Tour. I do like the dynamic of having all guys on the course at the same time and watching how that impacts the leaderboard, because we're literally seeing things change in real time because everybody has the same amount of holes left. With that being said, the Live Tour and the quality of the golfers, it's very high end heavy, right? So the guys at the top end, the guys like DJ and even Reed and those guys, they've got some names, but it gets really diluted and really soft very quickly through the middle and the back end of that. I do think, though, that we're going to see more guys make the move after the British Open. I think a lot of guys were kind of waiting to see what would happen, get through the major season, and then make their moves. It's been highly speculated and documented that Hideki Matsuyama and Patrick Cantlay and a number of these guys are just waiting to make the move until major season's over. Whether or not that actually materializes, who knows? But even Rory, who you mentioned, has kind of softened his stance a little bit on the live guys in the tour. And I think part of that is just the initial emotional reaction to feeling like these guys have basically become traitors, to now saying, hey, I've competed with and played against these guys for 10 plus years, and maybe we need to take a look at things from a fresh perspective. So I think some of that will help the PGA Tour, and whether or not the Live Tour, I think, is long term, I would say that there's probably a 70-30 chance that the Live Tour disappears within the next 5 years.
Yeah.
With that being said, I hope that what it does is it gives the players some leverage. The guys on tour, especially the younger guys, it gives them some leverage to change some of the dynamics. The fact that a guy can be a PGA Tour pro and basically go broke playing tournament to tournament if he doesn't make cuts is mind-boggling to me. But that's what existed and what's always existed. So I hope that the Live Tour gives the players some advantage and some leverage against the tour. And then I hope that whatever the Live Tour does from a broadcasting and branding perspective, that those things will have a positive impact and force the tour's hand to make some changes and to be more dynamic. So at the very least, that's what I hope happens. And who knows? I mean, we could see two competitive tours basically dueling it out on the international and domestic stage for the long term if more of these guys decide to make the jump. But I think with the bench strength, the Rorys, the Tigers, just the pedigree that the PGA Tour has, even though they're in danger of losing some stars, I don't think they're in any long-term danger of like the league folding in on itself.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, it is what it is at the moment. We'll see how it turns out, and I think, like you said, some guys are going to move there after the Open, and then some guys are going to move there after the Tour Championship after they get paid. In the FedEx Cup, they don't want to give up their FedEx Cup points. So we'll see who moves over. No one that's moved over yet has really tugged at my heartstrings. Really, I guess if Hideki moves over, that'd be kind of shitty because he's a really big name in the Asian market and the world market. But we'll see. But that's enough about Live. Let's talk about the Open, man. This is the culmination of the whole year. This is the I love this event. This is probably my favorite major, I would say. It's a totally different style of golf. You're going to see guys that are going to be putting from 30 yards off the fairway. You're going to see guys with flip wedges that hitting it into 40-mile-per-hour winds potentially. I mean, go ahead and talk about the course, but I love this tournament. What about you, man?
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned it, St. Andrews. It is the home of golf. This venue in some form or fashion has been being played for 500 years. And so it really goes back to the roots of golf, the way that the game was formed. And to your point, links golf is the most traditional style of golf, and this is a true links golf course. It provides a number of challenges that your American players don't typically see on a week-to-week basis. And so we see a higher frequency of, higher ranked guys in terms of OWGR winning in this major versus any other. The US Open and, even Augusta, they tend to be in the 5 to 15 ranges where we typically see guys win, guys who are ranked within the top 5 or top 15. And here in the British Open, you mentioned it, because of all of the challenges that presents, the average winner is typically ranked 39th, so almost double. So we see guys like Louis out of nowhere, or Morikawa, who was on nobody's radar leading into this, win these championships. And I think it speaks to the style of golf that is presented and what players will be forced to do, taking them out of their comfort zone. So for me this week, the key stats that I've built into my model when we reference the rankings and stats for the week, approach, like it is every week, will be number one for me. Good drives, not necessarily bombs and not necessarily fairway finds, but putting yourself in good positions. We'll talk about it a little bit further as we get into it, but guys with distance, especially if the conditions are benign and the course becomes gettable, will have a massive advantage versus the guys that are shorter hitters. But we do expect wind and the conditions to play a major factor this week. If the course is firm and fast, even if guys are hitting fairway woods and irons off the greens, we expect the ball to travel an immense distance, which really mitigates that difference between the guys that are long ball hitters and the guys that are short ball hitters. If my carry distance is 250, but it's going to roll out to 310 yards, I'm still going to be hitting a wedge into, the high number of par 4 holes on this course. So good drives, bogey avoidance with tough conditions, guys who can grind out pars. Par is a good score typically when the conditions are tough. 3-putt avoidance, you mentioned it, massive greens, right? Widest fairways that they're going to see all year, biggest greens they're going to see. So it means just because you hit a green in regulation doesn't mean you're going to be guaranteed a birdie. And so 3-putt avoidance will be key. And then again, it might sound somewhat contradictory because there's only 2 par 5s, but those are really the only holes where you can have some scoring opportunities. And if you're not birdieing the par 5s, you lose basically any opportunity to gain advantage on the field. So par 5 scoring will be factored into my model this week. And I think if you're smart, you'll be looking at that. Just real quick, this course has been played. The last 2 renditions were played in 2015 and 2010. A lot of the guys that are on the field list this week competed at least in the 2015 edition. And you can see our boy Louis Oosthuizen. Obviously, he won here in 2010 and then lost in a playoff in 2015. I imagine he will be a very popular pick this week, but a lot of familiar names: Spieth, Sergio Garcia, Danny Willett, Brooks Koepka, Adam Scott are featured on both leaderboards and are competing this week. So I expect a lot of people will be playing the course fit narrative, or at least the tournament history narrative this week. But like you, something that we alluded to, play the guys in the best form. That's typically been the best indicator for who's going to win the Open. It's the guys that are coming in the hottest. And so we jump right into the top of the board. And like you would imagine, Rory McIlroy is number one. Scotty Scheffler, fresh off a miscut from the Scottish Open, is in at $11,000. Rahm, Thomas, Morikawa, and Spieth. Interesting. Spieth, $8,900 last week, $10,000 this week. Where do you think you're going to go, Rick? And where do you think people end up in the high end of the field?
Okay, so before I get into that, I do want to talk about the weather real quick. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is something that obviously you can't predict because Scotland weather tends to flip on a dime. But as of right now, it looks pretty benign as far as like we're not expecting like super heavy winds, like over 30 miles per hour at any point on Thursday or Friday. It's looking like on Thursday, from what I'm reading and projecting, the morning guys from about 7 a.m. till about noon or 1 p.m., those guys are going to have like 10 to 15 mile per hour winds. And then afternoon, it's going to get up a little bit higher to like maybe 15 to 20 mile per hour winds with up to like 28, 25 mile per hour gusts. And then Friday, it looks pretty steady throughout the day. It's looking like 10 to 15 miles per hour all day. So the only guys that have any sort of wind advantage maybe would be like Thursday, just like AM guys. Like those are just like the guys that if you're playing Thursday Showdown, obviously you might want to target the AM guys on Thursday. But the British Open's a little bit different than like the other majors where they don't do split tees. They don't do everyone tees off on the first hole starting at 6:30 in the morning all the way to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So tee times are like there's no like AM PM kind of draw. You're kind of like looking at guys that maybe are in like little pockets, like that tee off and like within like an hour of each other. Like those are the guys maybe you want to stack in the morning, like the guys teeing off from like 8 to 10 a.m. or something like that. So if you have guys in that range that you like, you might want to build them all together in the same lineup together. But as of right now, it's not really looking like any sort of major advantage other than like maybe the early Thursday morning guys up until about noon. So just build accordingly, but just keep in mind that this is, it's Tuesday right now. This could flip by Thursday. It could get heavier winds by Thursday. We just don't know what the situation is. So if you're going to plan on building some AM, PM lineups, also switch that, build some PM, AM lineups just in case there might be rain or something like that that delays weather that we saw, like the delays play like we saw at the Players Championship earlier this year. So if you're going to build some wave stacks, just build them opposite of each other. Also, do some PM, AM stacks, and then you might be able to gain a little bit of advantage because unlike other sports, when it locks at 1 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the evening on the West Coast on Wednesday, you can't do anything after that. You're locked in and you just kind of have to roll with the punches then. So I am going to be targeting some of the AM guys a little bit on Thursday, but other than that, that's all I really have to say about the weather. There's nothing really else that we're seeing right now. So just kind of pay attention to the weather. I'm not going to really build lineups till tomorrow evening up until lock. So we'll see how it goes for the weather. Now, back to your original question about this top end range from 10,000 to 11,100. It's all flocking to two guys here. Rory McIlroy right at the top and Jordan Spieth right at the bottom. Everyone is playing those two guys. They're coming in 20 to 25%, it looks like at the moment as far as ownership goes. Everyone else seems like a pivot to those two guys. If you have the stones to stomach playing Scotty Scheffler coming off of a missed cut, Jon Rahm coming off of a made cut, but playing pretty bad. Colin Morikawa, pretty bad lead-in form. Justin Thomas has been okay, but he's coming off of a withdrawal with a back injury or whatever the situation is there. If you can stomach playing those guys and fade Rory McIlroy or Jordan Spieth at the top, or both of them, you will automatically start your lineups very differently than most of the field. The one that I gravitate towards here, I don't know, man. It's hard to fade Rory. It really is, because he's been strokes gained total. He's been number one over the last 24 rounds. He's said this is the best golf he's been playing in years, and it's really hard to fade him at the top. So I do like Rory at the top. I'm going to play him. He's going to be in my player pool, but I really have a tough time getting away from a sub 10% John Rahm. I mean, John Rahm, we know his pedigree. We know how good of a golfer is. And even though he's been struggling lately, he's one of those guys that if John Rahm comes out and wins this tournament, we're not going to be surprised. So can he win at a potential birdie fest? If the winds are going to be down, this could end up being a birdie fest. I don't know. I kind of like Rahm at tougher courses and tougher situations, but if he's going to be sub 10%, and 10,800 where he's going to be cheaper than Scotty Scheffler or Rory McIlroy, it's going to be really hard for me to not play John Rahm. So for me, it's probably going to be John Rahm and Rory McIlroy up here at the top. If I'm going to play those two, I probably have to fade the rest of the range. Morikawa's coming in low, like 5% ownership, which is pretty intriguing, but I just can't get there with him right now. It just looks like he's fighting something in his swing. Jordan Spieth obviously has great open history. He has, I think, he's won it. Obviously, he's finished second. He's finished top 10 multiple times. So he's going to be super highly owned there. But I think I'd rather go to the chalkier guys in the 9K range than go to a Jordan Spieth who, his putter's been pretty cold this year. So it wouldn't be surprising if Jordan Spieth recreated his putter magic and did his thing at the Open. But I think I'd rather go to Rahm and Rory up at the top here. What about you?
Yeah, it's interesting. Going into the Scottish, I think I made the comment to you that I was all in on Jordan Spieth for the Open. And now that we're seeing ownership that is projected to be north of 20%, obviously he's got the track record in terms of how he's done at, historical British Opens. I don't know if I can get there. I just think, to your point, that you either need to take a firm stance, especially with the two guys that you mentioned, Spieth and McIlroy, and then when you drop down into the 9Ks, Xander, which we'll get into in a second, the most popular two builds are going to start Rory Xander or Spieth Xander. You're going to have 70% of the lineups out there, and I'm exaggerating, but start with those two guys in lineups. And so you just need to figure out, if you can stomach fading one of those guys. I always love to play game theory. I hit Morikawa last year in the Open because he came in kind of a very similar middling form. And if you look back, I mean, other than the Scottish, he finished, top 10 at the JP McManus, the US Open, where through 36 holes, it looked like he was going to win that tournament. He ended up finishing top 5. So it's just one of those things where, from a DFS perspective, I think I like Morikawa a lot. His number in the outright betting looks really good. But to you, I have concerns because his game has not looked as rock solid as it did last year. But at the same point in time, like, you give me Colin Morikawa at plus 30 odds or less than 8% ownership, and that just feels like a must play, and you just kind of got to roll the dice that you get the best version of him. I'm not really sure. The other guy that's interesting to me here is Justin Thomas. I always fall into the Justin Thomas trap with majors. He always busts the statistical models, which he's doing again this week. His history at the British Open has not been great, and his form has been okay. It's kind of been up and down. I can see the case for Rahm that you're making, and even for Scheffler at some point. But for me, I think if I was going to hone in on one guy in particular that I would take from this region, I think it would be Morikawa, and it would be strictly from a game theory perspective. It would be because the ownership's going to be so depressed.
Yeah, man. I'm right now, my site is showing 4.6% ownership on Colin Morikawa, who is the defending champion.
Yeah.
That is a crazy number for somebody who's, won 2 majors already, including this one last year. When you think about it, like, if you start your lineups off Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, or John Rahm, Colin Morikawa, they both take the same amount of salary, but one is going to be severely reduced in ownership, and you can pretty much get as chalky as you want if you take Rahm Morikawa to start your lineup. I mean, or who are we to say that Rory McIlroy and Jordan Spieth have any more or any less equity or win equity than John Rahm and Colin Morikawa? There's no way we can say that, because these are all high quality golfers, top ranked golfers in the world, and
Multi-time major winners.
yeah,
Yeah.
multi-time major winners, and the difference between these guys is like literally splitting hairs. Like, you can even start your lineup Scheffler Thomas if you wanted to, and be different, in my opinion. So it's really tough to not play the game theory up here, especially for me, because the 9K range is just loaded with guys that I absolutely love, and chalky guys that I'm actually going to play. So up here, I think I just can't be that chalky. But if I was going to eat the chalk up here, I would probably lean more towards Rory than Spieth, just because I don't know, man. I feel like Spieth sometimes he could just blow up sometimes, and even though he gives his all on every single shot, like, he has a tendency to potentially blow up on Thursday. And I mean, he is teeing off at 3 o'clock late in the afternoon on Thursday, so he's going to have higher winds on Thursday. So I don't know. Can you put the magic beans together and chip and putt his way to a championship here? Yeah, maybe, but I think I would rather take the leverage and ownership with Colin Morikawa right above him, or John Rahm right above him, than eat the chalk with Spieth, especially because I'm going to eat the chalk with Xander right below him. So I think I have to fade Spieth. It's really tough to fade him because he did look good last week. He had a chance to win down the stretch at the Scottish. He had one bad hole where he made one bad swing that cost him the championship. Yeah, he has good history here. He was runner up here. I think last time he played here, he was runner up here. So
Yeah, Morikawa.
Yeah. So last year he was a runner up to Morikawa. He played good here in the St. Andrews when the tournament was here back in 2015. I think he had a top 10 then too. But yeah, it's tough to fade, but I think I have to fade Spieth up here, especially if I'm going to have Rory McIlroy in my player pool, which I will, because I have a much, I don't know about you, but I have a much harder time fading McIlroy than I do Spieth, just from a pure gut instinct kind of feeling.
Well, I mean, it's the one thing that I would say, which falls in line exactly where you're coming from with McIlroy, is the fact that the last couple of years we have seen the guys coming in with the best form are typically the guys that end up winning this tournament. Morikawa was, I think, inarguably the best player on the planet coming into this tournament. The last year, obviously, he didn't play well in the Scottish. Everybody jumped off of him, and then he won. And I think, other than maybe Xander and one other guy in the 9Ks, Rory is the hottest golfer on the planet. And to your point, from just a pure gut check perspective, it makes all the sense in the world that Rory would win this tournament this week, which is why everybody's playing him in DraftKings. The number on the outright markets is not good, and so he's probably not going to catch a bunch of steam, but he's going to be in 30% of DraftKings lineups this week, and rightfully so. He's been playing great. And to your point, what becomes difficult is exactly what you're talking about in this range, is the fact that the guy right at the top, 9,900, is the other guy absolutely everybody will be playing in Xander Schauffele. The other guys that are catching steam late in this range, in terms of if you're watching, content online or you're reading articles, are Cam Smith and Shane Lowry. But Xander Schauffele is really where you have to make your stand. Do you play him or do you fade him? Because he will literally be damn near 35% up.
Yeah, I'm seeing like 29% at the moment. In higher stakes GPPs, like I usually play, like I'm going to play the 888 this week. He's going to be well into the 30s, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm going to play him. He did me good last week. We saw this floodgate situation earlier this year with Scheffler when he won 4 out of 6 events or something like that. I don't know if this is a floodgate situation with Xander, but it really could be, because he could win the Travelers, he could win the Scottish, he could win this week, and he's well on his way to potentially winning the FedEx Cup this year. And the talks that we had earlier this year about Scotty Scheffler locking up Player of the Year kind of in flux now. If Xander wins the Open and then he wins the FedEx Cup, that's a conversation to be had between Xander and Scotty Scheffler on who the Player of the Year is. So we already know how good he is at Eastlake. He wins the Shadow Leaderboard like every year. So if he goes into that tournament, second place in FedEx Cup points behind Scheffler, he's going to possibly win that tournament. So I'm going to play him. I'm going to eat the chalk with him. And then the next issue that I have is, if I'm going to eat the chalk with Schauffele, am I going to eat the chalk with Fitzpatrick right below him? Because Fitz is coming in chalky as well. He's coming in, Xander I'm seeing at 27% or 28%. Fitz I'm seeing at like 20%. And even though the ownership is about 5 to 10% difference between the two, I can't split hairs between these guys. These guys are both on fire. Matthew Fitzpatrick coming off of a U.S. Open win. He played really well at the Scottish last week. We know how well he plays on links courses. He has he's won the Race to Dubai in the past. He's a European Tour kind of guy, and he's English to begin with. So we know he grew up on these kind of tracks. So I like Fitz in this range. The guy that is getting squeezed here, as far as ownership goes, and I don't know what to do with him, man, because he has been just the nuts in majors, is Will Z at 9,600. He's coming in he's looking at sub 10% ownership, which is crazy to think.
Which is insane.
Somebody who has, been so lights out and nuts at the majors for the last year and a half. But he did withdraw from this tournament last year with a back injury. He got caught up in some fescue, took a bad swing in the fescue, had to take some time off. He is, if not Justin Thomas, he is probably the best ball striker in the world. He is a good long-range putter. Like we talk about his short-range putting a lot, but on this big greens where he's going to have long lag putts that he needs to do, he is one of those guys that putts the ball well in his lag putts. So I'm not scared of him three-putting in these situations. What are you doing with Will Z? Because I don't know what to do with him. He's going to be low-owned. And the two guys above him, I absolutely love in Xander and Matthew Fitzpatrick. And then the guy right below him at 9,500, I absolutely love as well. He's probably going to be my pick to win the tournament. I bet him outright, Cam Smith at 9,500. If we're going to have a situation where we're going to have wedges and a putting contest here where the winds aren't going to get up too much, there's no one else I want on this planet besides Cam Smith, who is probably the best putter on the planet when it comes down to it. And I think he showed me something last week. He had a bad round one. He came back, he fought back to make the cut, and then he played really well on the weekend. I think he ended up finishing top 5 or top 6 or something like that at the Scottish. And he has a good track history on British Open type of courses. So I love those three guys right around Zalatoris. I just don't know what to do with Will Z, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. The guys that nobody's going to play are Cantlay, Hideki, and Hovland. Like no one's going to play them.
DJ too. They're not going to play DJ.
DJ is the only one I was going to mention here that is interesting to me because of his British track record. He's always played well. Played very well at St. Andrews here in 2015. So he would be the one guy of the lowly owned guys, or the guys that no one's talking about, that I would take a hard look at. And for me, Cantlay, from a style perspective, you would think everything sets up for him, but he's been so god awful on majors, no one's going to play him. So to your point, all of the ownership in this area is going to filter to the three guys you mentioned, Xander, Fitz, and Will Z. And then the fourth guy in is probably Shane Lowry. He's you're getting a discount. The narrative around Fitz being a Euro player, he fits all of that. And then, of course, the fact that, dude, short of winning, he's done everything else. Inarguably having his best year on tour. He's been striking the crap out of the ball. And again, he is a former Open winner. So, those guys are going to garner all of the ownership. For me in this area, I love the Cam Smith call because I think you're going to need creativity. I just worry that, his ball striking's been so good and the guy cannot putt. I mean, it's been complete opposite for him lately of what he has been known to do. He caught Jordan Spieth disease, where it's hey, he was team magic bean, sink every putt, unbelievable around the greens to strike the shit out of the ball, can no longer putt.
He gained in putting last week at the Scottish, so he kind of flipped his putter around a little bit. We just need him to marry his insane approach game that's been going on for the last month with the insane putting game that he had towards the beginning of the PGA Tour season when he won the Players and the what's the other tournament that he won? The Tournament of Champions in Kapalua. So we want to marry those two here, and I think it's time. I think Cam Smith is going to be, if not right there on the first page of the leaderboard, he's going to be right there at the top of the leaderboard going into Sunday, and probably one of those final groups on Sunday, I think.
Yeah, I mean, your original question was, what do you do with Will Z?
Yeah.
I don't think that all three of those guys at the top of the board, even four if you throw Cam Smith in there, can all be 20+% owned. There's just no way. And I think at the end of the day, people will look at Will Z missing the cut here last year in the British Open, and then the fact that he's not coming in the, I guess you can say, in the best of form, even though he's coming off of a second place in the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
Like, I just think a lot of people will end up opting for Xander and Fitz. And I think that popular build that we mentioned, Spieth or Rory in the 10K range, and then Xander at the top of the nines, I think he's going to end up getting squeezed out of that mix. And so I think from an ownership perspective, I think he's probably going to come in a lot lower owned than we think. And I from my perspective, in terms of, and it's something that you alluded to, his performance in majors, you just cannot ignore that. It's very similar to Tony Finau, where it's like when Finau was at his best, we didn't think he was going to win, but it was like, if you wanted to have the optimal build from a DFS perspective, you had to have Tony Finau in there. And I feel the same way about Will Z. Is he in line for another heartbreak? Is he one of those guys that's going to contend this week? I don't know, but I just feel like you cannot ignore how he's played in the biggest tournaments, on the biggest stages from the DFS perspective. So for me, I'm going to be heavily invested in Will Z this week. And if he ends up hurting his back and missing the cut, or, basically the clock's run out on him, then it'll end up eating me.
Yeah. He does have a nice Thursday tee time too, 10 o'clock in the morning. That's pretty nice. I'll be honest with you, man. I like everyone in this range except for Hovland. I'm not going to get there with Hovland.
What happened to Victor Hovland?
He's been awful. I don't know what
this guy.
I don't know what happened to him. His ball striking's still there, but I think his terrible around the green game and terrible like putting and stuff like that has finally like caught up to him a little bit, and where he's not performing at the same kind of golfer that he was, earlier this year and late last year when he was winning tournaments overseas and stuff like that. So I can't get there with Vic. I think I'm going to fade Hideki also, just because I don't really know, like with Hideki, he does have good open history, but I don't really know where his mind's at. I think like he's ready to make that move to live like right after this tournament this week. So I'm kind of just out on Hideki and Victor this week. But DJ 9,200 and up, I like every single one of those guys. And I think every single one of those guys are going to be in my player pool. I'm going to eat the chalk with those guys there. I'm going to figure out where I need to make stands elsewhere down the board or even above them. But that range from DJ up to Xander, I like every single one of those players. Cantlay, even though his major record is not that great, he played all right at the U.S. Open, and I think he finished in top 15 at the U.S. Open. He played really well last week. He made a charge on Sunday and was right in contention on Sunday. And I feel like there's this like I heard it on another podcast earlier this year, there was this like bromance between Scotty Scheffler and Sam Burns, and those guys are just feeding off each other and just winning tournaments back and forth. Now I think that Xander and Cantlay, who are like the two best friends, they're kind of feeding off each other. They're bros, man. They ever since they won that tournament together at what's the team event in Zurich in New Orleans, ever since they won that tournament together, they've been back and forth and playing really well. As on the same courses. So I like Cantlay. I like Lowry. Lowry, I could potentially take a second look at and be a little bit more cautious on him, just because Lowry, I kind of like more in tougher conditions where the score I think is going to be like -9, -10. But I think this week the score is going to end up being in the high teens, like -18, -19. I think it's going to be a little bit of a birdie fest. So I don't know how much I really like Lowry this week, but you can't deny the fact that he's an Open champion. He's been one of the best guys tee to green all year. So he's definitely going to be in my player pool. I just think I might take a little bit of an underweight stance for him because he's going to be chalky as well. I think I'd rather pivot some of those shares from Shane Lowry down to DJ for me. So yeah, I like everyone from 9,200 and up, but I will fade Hideki and Hovland in this range.
So did you know of the golfers that are priced at $9,000 and above, for the key stats for me this week, there is one guy who ranks inside the top 20 in every single one of the metrics: tee to green total, strokes gained approach, good drives, bogey avoidance, 3-putt avoidance, par 5 scoring, which I mentioned is kind of my own little piece, and then opportunities gained. And his last 2 tournaments, he has a 3rd and a 9th place finish. Of the guys, there's, I don't know, 15 of them from $9,000 to $11,000. Do you know who that golfer is? I will tell you, it is Shane Lowry.
Wow.
The guy has been on fire. And the way that you feel about Cam Smith, that's the way I feel about Lowry.
Yeah.
There seems
where
to
did,
be
where did he finish? Where did he finish 3rd at?
He finished 3rd at the JP McManus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So again, a hit and giggle, but we give Xander the credit for the win. Burns finished 2nd there. Lowry finished in 3rd place.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
So interesting enough, but yeah, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
You don't have to sell me on Shane Lowry, man. I've been playing him all year. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if he won another Open. Can he win in a Birdie Fest? We'll see. But I love that range, man. I'm gonna pepper that 9K range from DJ up. Those guys, DJ was a 36-hole leader here last time, and then he had a really bad weekend. So we know he can tear this course up, and he's been playing pretty good on the Live Tour. I mean,
he finished 2nd in the last Live event.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what you think about those fields or whatever, I mean, he's still playing pretty good. I mean, DJ is DJ. He's not one of those guys that gets involved in the whole, what we talked about earlier, the whole politics of the Live situation. He just got his money. He's just going to go out and play golf, and that's just kind of who DJ is. So, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to have some shares of DJ. Would I be surprised if he won this week? Yeah, I think I'd be a little bit surprised if he won this week, but I would not be surprised if he was in contention on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically with the Live guys, there's kind of a dark cloud, and that's a lot to carry. Again, not physically, but mentally and emotionally. Like there's some people with those guys. If DJ finds himself in contention, or Louis, who's a very popular pick this week, there's a certain emotional and mental side of it that it's like, you're kind of a foreigner in a strange land, right? Like you're an outside force. You're playing for a non-sanctioned league, and you're in this major. So I think that will weigh in on their ability to be able to close down the stretch. I don't think that stops either of those guys that I mentioned from playing well, to your point. But I do think, at least in my mind, if it gives me a reason to cross them off in the outright market, then I'll go ahead and use that narrative.
Yep, I agree with you. And speaking of Live guys, let's talk about the guy who's won here before and 2nd place here before, right here.
So your boy, King Louis, obviously not the top with Burns coming in at 8,900, but right there, very popular pick, getting a ton of steam from Mayo and a number of people within the DFS community. But the 8K range is also peppered with very good guys. Fleetwood, a popular pick. Koepka, immaculate British Open history. Tony Finau, who we mentioned, unbelievable major in British Open history. And a couple other what I would call suspect guys that are coming in a little bit under the radar in Bryson DeChambeau, and a guy that you and I both love, Joaquin Niemann. But the 8Ks, not as strong as the 9s, but still, I mean, a phenomenal range of guys and a number of different reasons why to play and why not to play guys here. Where are you going to end up?
So, me personally, if I'm going to eat the chalk here in the 9K range, I have to take some stands here in the 8K range. And the guys that I'm going to take stands on here, Tommy Fleetwood, 8,600. He's coming in the chalkiest. Phenomenal week last week. He really cost me big last week because I didn't play him that much last week, and I was in a pretty big cash game where it came down to basically Tommy Fleetwood versus John Rahm for me on the weekend, between me and the guy that I was playing against, and Tommy Fleetwood just kicked his ass on the weekend. So I'm gonna fade that chalk. don't think I can fade the Finau chalk just because he's been phenomenal
Yep.
recently. And he's been lights out at the British Open in the past. I think this is a good spot for breakthrough win for Finau. He plays really well overseas. We've seen it year in, year out. I don't think I'm okay with fading the Fleetwood chalk. I am not okay with fading the Finau chalk, who are the two chalky guys in this range. Everyone else in this range is pretty low owned. I know you're saying Louis getting some steam and stuff like that, but he's not going to reach 10% ownership or anything like that. So for me, and Mike might like to hear this. I don't know how you're going to like to hear this, but for me, my number one play in this range, and it might be tilting, it might be annoying, it might be, it might be sickening to do, especially given the fact that he's 8,700, is going to be Ty Hatton.
Oh,
And yeah, I
hates Hatton. It's like that's like heartburn for him.
I really like him this week. He is one of those guys that is an elite putter. His three putt avoidance and his approach putting is number one. Like anywhere you look, the guy just never three putts. And if he's gonna have a couple 100-foot putts this week, which is very possible on these double greens and huge greens at St. Andrews, he's the guy that's going to two putt every single time. And I think when it comes down to a course where wedge play is important and putting is important and avoiding three putts is important, and when Tommy Fleetwood right below him is going to be super highly owned, I'm going to find that extra $100, go up to Tyrrell Hatton, and I think he's going to be a staple in a lot of my DFS lineups this week. I'm going to take that stand this week. I really like Ty Hatton this week, and I like Louis above him too. We can't ignore the course history. He's been playing all right on the Live Tour, I guess, but for me, I'm going to take my stands here and play Ty Hatton. I'll play Neiman at the bottom, and I will also have a little bit, just a little sprinkle of Bryson, just in case.
Yeah, I mean, Bryson is probably the guy that clearly no one's going to play from this region.
Oh no, no one's playing him.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to your point, if you can get any semblance of what Bryson was a year ago, obviously he has the capability of anybody, the best capability to break this course, right? So we talked about like conditions being benign and driving distance being a huge advantage. That's Bryson. If the winds lay down and you can smash this ball without having any recourse for what could happen because they're massive fairways and even the native lands are not that penal, that signals an opportunity for Bryson, right? At the same point in time, I'm a big Bryson guy. I've always backed him. Like I love when we get him at low ownership and high odds. I just it's a point that you've mentioned a bunch of times. Like I gotta see something. I gotta see a flash of something. And
I actually got that little bit of something from that last live event. He actually looked pretty healthy. He played. I think he finished in the top 10 at that event. He made a quadruple bogey on a par 5 on that last round, and he still ended up shooting under par that round. So I actually saw a little something from Bryson at that last event where he looked pretty healthy. Where I'm going to I'm not going to play him that much. He's going to be like less than 5% owned. I will play him in like 10% of my lineups, be double the field on him, and be okay with it. If he kills me, he kills me. But this is one of those situations where Bryson's going to have multiple chances to drive par fours here with his driver and could easily make birdies. This makes me think back to the last time that we saw Bryson really playing really good golf was at the Ryder Cup last year, and that was at Whistling Straits, which is kind of like a Linksy style kind of course. And I just think back to that first hole on a Sunday singles match where he literally drove the green and almost made eagle. And I think that's going to be a situation like similar to what we're going to see at St. Andrews this week with some short par fours where Bryson doesn't have any fear of potentially driving that green. Not saying I'm going to be like super overweight on him, but I will be a little overweight on him. I am going to take a little bit of stand. I know you're saying that you haven't seen it, but I did see a little bit at that last live event.
At this level, especially with these guys, with the names we're talking about, Fleetwood, Koepka, Finau, DeChambeau, like you kind of got to take your stances and pick your narrative. So if you've seen something, you're like, I'm starting to see the trend. Like we talked about before, you always want to be early and not late. And so if you think that this is the opportunity to jump back in on Bryson early because he is flashing, I can't fault that. For me, like you, I'm going to eat the chalk with Finau. He's going to be ridiculously owned, but I just can't ignore the guy's got a 15th, a 3rd, a 9th, a 27th, and an 18th.
Too good.
Yeah, too good is history. And then, of course, statistically, again, very similar to Lowry, he's one of the few guys that basically ranks inside the top 25 in all of the key stats that I've identified this week. He's got a top 15 and a top 5 finish in 2 of his last 3 events. There's so much to glom onto. So I'm going to eat the chalk like you with Finau. The one guy that I may sprinkle in, and it's because of the course history.
Don't say Brooks.
It is, dude. I watched him top 10 with JP McManus. He's a Euro guy by trade. He came up through the DP Euro Tour, not the PGA Tour. I just think that it's not a bet for me, but I like the leverage on the DFS side, and so I am going to have a healthy amount of Brooks in my lineups this week.
All right, you play Brooks. I'll play Bryson.
Perfect.
We'll see who finishes best. You cannot pay me to play Brooks, man. This guy is just completely checked out of golf. I just don't think he gives a shit about golf anymore. Like,
if anybody's catching the heat, it's been him, dude. He's been getting absolutely railed by the media because of Liv.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know, but he got his money. I think all he really cares about is like partying with his new wife and like doing all these things in Florida and going to sporting events and stuff like that. I just don't think he cares about golf anymore. So you literally couldn't pay me to play Brooks Koepka. I will take Bryson 10 times out of 10 over Brooks, who both of those guys, even though they got their money, I think Bryson actually still cares about golf and he cares about like grinding it out and putting a good tournament together. But Brooks, I'm out. I'd much rather save the $100 and play Tony Finau right below him.
Yeah, I just think it's a good pivot off of Finau. I mean, obviously, no one's talking about him. Corey Connor's going to get his ownership. Yeah. So the other guy that we didn't talk about that's at least worth mentioning is Burns. Burns played well in the JP McManus. It feels like he's flying under the radar, especially with Hatton and Louis and Fleetwood all at the top of this range. And then, of course, the guys that we mentioned in the 9Ks, because it's very difficult. If you're starting those lineups with Rory Xander or Rory Spieth or Spieth Xander, it's really hard to fit him into lineups and still have enough for the other 3 guys left in your lineup. And so I think a lot of people will end up going Spieth, Xander, Finau to start their lineups because it still gives you a decent amount in the 7Ks to be able to build a full 6-man card out. If you're starting with those guys at the tops of the 9s and 10s, like I don't think you can get to Burns.
Yeah, you can't. He's a squeezed out guy for me, especially when I like Louis and Hatton right below him. Burns is a tough one for me. I understand, like, I understand that he's been playing well this year. I just don't know if his game really suits well for open tracks. Do you remember what his price was last year at the Open when we did our first show together? It was like It was like 6,100
or something like that.
Yeah, it was like 6,100, and I was all about playing him last year at 6,100, but at 8,900, I just can't get there, man. I just something about playing Sam Burns at this kind of course doesn't really suit well for me. I mean, he played okay last week. Like, he didn't play great. He made the cut, but like I played him really heavy on Showdown on Thursday because I thought he was going to make a run, but he just never did. He went backwards the other way. So I just got a bad taste in my mouth with Sam Burns. I'd rather go to Louis and Hatton right below him.
Yeah, no, I can't fault you for that. And like I said, I think for a lot of people, especially if you're building with a guy from the 10s and the 9s, like Burns is he's going to get squeezed out. He's going to be low in ownership. And again, there was nothing heroic about what we saw in the Scottish, but he finished second at the JP McManus to Xander. And you just got to figure out if that's the roller coaster ride that you want to jump on. I think most people are going to opt not to. But, when we talk about chalk, when we get down into this next range, which is the 7Ks, I think the 2 guys right off the hop are going to be super chalky in Homa and Bobby Mack, even though Bobby Mack burned a lot of people last week, including myself in the Scottish. I still think both those guys are going to garner a lot of ownership. And this range is peppered with names like Mito Pereira and Seamus Powers and Justin Rose, Tiger Woods, Paul Casey, the new addition to the Live Tour, Thomas Peters, who's gaining a lot of steam, Jordan Smith, who we saw play very well through 4 rounds at the Scottish Open. Give me your top 3 guys in the 7Ks.
So This is going to be let's talk about fade first. This is going to be the toughest fade for me. I'm really having a tough time stomaching this fade, but I'm going to in GPPs. I'm just going to completely fade Max Homa. He's coming in at 25% ownership, maybe even more ownership than that. Bobby Mack's actually a good pivot off him. He's actually coming in much lower ownership than Max Homa at the moment, but Max Homa at 7,900, he seems like the perfect play. 7,900 is just criminally cheap for Max Homa. There's no reason why he should be priced lower than Sam Burns at 8,900 or Louis at 8,800. He should be priced like with those guys or above those guys. So 7,900, everyone knows it. Max Homa is a great play. The thing that scares me a little bit about Max Homa, besides the ownership, is the fact that he's teeing it up with Tiger Woods this week.
Yeah.
And so that scares me a little bit because we don't know how he's going to react to the flocks and flocks of fans that are going to be following him. They're following Tiger Woods, but he's going to be part of that group. And everyone always says playing with Tiger is a different circus than playing with Rory or Phil. Like these guys garner fans and stuff, but it's nothing like Tiger Woods. So the fact that he's 7,900, the fact that he's coming in close to 30% ownership, really, really tough fade for me. But I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna play any Max Homa. He earlier this year I would never play Max Homa, but then I started playing him because you talked me into him, and I started loving playing Max Homa. But at this ownership, playing with Tiger Woods, late tee time on Thursday, I just can't get there. So I'm going to fade him. And I think if you fade Max Homa in the 7K range, you can play anyone else you want because he's going to be the chalkiest of the chalks. Everyone else is pretty flat ownership. The only other guy gaining a little bit of ownership who I really like this week just because his price is criminally cheap and he's not gaining too much ownership is Ryan Fox at 7,100. He was 700 last week at the Scottish, and this week he's 7,100. So I think that's pretty criminally cheap, but I think most DFS players know that. So I love Ryan Fox at 7,100. I'm going to pivot Max Homa and just play Bobby Mack, who's been phenomenal in majors. He's coming in sub 10% ownership. I like that. We got a flop lag situation with him missing the cut last week, so his ownership's going to go down even more, I think, a little bit because of that. So I will gladly play the Robert McIntyre pivot to Max Homa at 7,800. The other guys I love in this range, in the 7K range, Seamus Power is just popping in every single model for me. If this is going to be a birdie fest, I love Seamus Power birdie fest. He played well at the Irish Open a couple weeks ago. Seamus Power at 7,400 is a top play for me. He will probably be in one of my main three lineups when I make them this week. Other than that, I don't really have takes on anyone else. Mito, I'm not going back to him. He absolutely killed me last week, man. He shot 81 on Friday to miss the cut and ruined my main lineup.
Severely undercursed the last few weeks, though.
Yeah, very undercursed the last few weeks. I get that. I like Thomas Peters at 7,200. I like Jordan Smith at 7,200. Gary Woodland, I played last week in my main lineup. He did well for me, 7,100. He's good. I don't really know. Justin Rose, I don't mind at 7,400. I know we don't usually like him that much, but he's been playing all right. And this is one of those courses where the old guys can play well. So I don't mind Justin Rose at 7,400. I'm not going back to Cam Young. I think he's a little broken. I think he's a little broken at the moment. Yeah, I think he's a little broken at the moment. I don't mind Adam Scott right below him. Mark Leishman was in a playoff here last time, so I don't mind him. I think I'd rather play Adam Scott. And then the live guys. I don't mind Reed or Gooch at 7,300. I think Gooch is a great 3-putt avoidance guy. So I don't mind him. But other than that, I don't really have any other names. Danny Willett, maybe. He plays well at the Alfred Dunhill Links. He just won earlier there this year. Cam Tringali.
Hosted at this course.
Yeah, which is hosted. That's what I meant. Oh, that's another reason why I like Ty Hatton from above is because he's great won. History. He's won that too. Cam Tringali at 7,000. He played all right last week. Kind of blew it. I don't know. What are you feeling? I mean, are you going to play Tiger at all?
Yeah, that was the one thing I wanted to bring up. I honestly, I will be fading Tiger Woods 100%.
Okay.
I just best case scenario for me in my mind, Tiger finishes top 20. He likely makes the cut, but he's going to be you're going to get so much ownership from the general public on him. Like I can't even roll there.
Yeah.
So it's just not it's a clear fade for me.
Yeah.
The guys that I do like in this area, that some of them you mentioned, I like Rose. He's been playing better. Obviously didn't have a great week last week. And then the other guy that I kind of throw out for argument's sake, just to consider, other than Willett, because I do like Willett a lot this week. You mentioned him briefly. Is Tringali? Tringali's his last British Open. He finished 26th. We saw him play really well last week. Obviously, the guy can't win, but even prior to that, he's got a top 15 finish, I think, at the U.S. Open. So he's played well in big tournaments. Obviously he sniffed contention, tasted smoke, but I like him from a DFS perspective, especially because I think no one's going to own him. And I think there's quite a bit of made cut equity with Tringali, especially in these big ones. And then Fox is the other guy that you mentioned. He shit on so many people, even though he made the cut. There were so many people that played him last week, and he kind of didn't show up. He finished, I don't know, like T47 or something like that. But all of the other trend narratives for previous winners, he fits. He's been playing great golf. He is one of the best links players on the planet. So I will definitely be going back to Fox this week too.
Yeah, I love that play. I think it's I don't care about the ownership with him. I think even if he gets to like 10-15%, I don't mind that. I'll eat that with him just because I think the price is
better
just
than
too
the
good.
20 last week that we had on ownership.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say overall in the total 7K range, I think my favorite plays are going to be Fox, Power, and Bobby Mack. Those are going to be my three favorite plays. And then like 3A and 3B are probably going to be like Rose and Peters, and you talked me into Tringali a little bit, Danny Willett. Like these are the guys that I'm going to play, and I'm going to also have some Reed and Gooch for sure, just in case if. I mean, obviously we can't glean anything from Live, so we don't really know what their form is like. But at a course like this, where putting is important, I think those two guys are really good putters, and I think it's a good spot for them, especially because of the fact that they're going to be super low owned.
Last guy I'll throw out you, any Henrik Stenson?
No.
I'd
rather play Paul. I'd rather play Paul Casey.
Yeah, dude, he's been so bad. You want to talk about a guy that's broken? Henrik Stenson is broken.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Paul Casey, by the way?
He's a non-play for me this week just because of the whole injury thing. The Live thing is a whole separate piece. We talked about that separately just in our text string that we have ongoing with Mike and Chris. But yeah, I mean, he's an easy fade for me. It just he hasn't played very much golf. He's not in great health, so just it's really easy for me just to walk right past him.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna between those two guys, Paul Casey and Tiger Woods, I'd rather play some Tiger Woods just to have him in my DFS lineups, and I think it's a situation where Tiger Woods could make the cut. But I'm out on Paul Casey too. I need him to play. I need to see him play 72 holes before I play him again. I guess he's not going to play 72 holes anymore. He's going to play 54 holes on the LIV Tour. But last guy before we move on to into the buckets, into the dumpster. JT Poston, 7,300, coming off
your
of a
boy.
win.
You hit a winner on our man.
I liked him. I liked him at John Deere. He was in that field. I thought he was pretty hot coming in. He strokes gained total on tour. He's one of the best over the last like 24 to 36 rounds. 7,300 is a pretty nice price for him. I just don't really know how his game translates to a link style course. I don't mind him if it's going to be a birdie fest. He's pretty good at making birdies. What are your thoughts?
It's an interesting call. For all the things that you mentioned, I think it's there's a viability with him. At the same point in time, like he's one of those names that I can just gloss over. Right? I can just move right past him, and I don't feel like there's anything that happens. And because of the win, I think he's priced $1,000 more. If he hadn't had that win and he somehow found his way into this, he'd be $6,300.
Yeah.
But I get the narrative behind him, and obviously it's difficult to ignore the win that he just had. But I'm not a Poston guy, so I don't think I can get there with him.
It's such a tough price range, especially with the guys also priced at 7,300 with Bez and Mito and Reed and Gooch. I don't know, man. I think I'd rather play any one of those other guys than JT
They're better
Poston.
players. Like
Yeah,
you mentioned,
they're better
Boucher,
players. Like the
Pereira,
7,300 price is
they're better
weird on him.
players.
I wish he was like 6,700 instead of 7,300.
Yep, absolutely. No,
All right.
speaking of 6,700 guys, the dumpster is packed. There's almost so many guys it's difficult to see. For me, down here, I like Mac Hughes. He tends to show up in majors. You talk about like being creative, the Cam Smith, Jordan Spieth. He's all of those things when he's playing his best golf. So I like Mac Hughes. I'm a sucker for Guido. Just the high end of Guido is very good. He has not played that way. He was god awful on the weekend in Scotland after making the cut. But Guido will probably find his way into lineups. And to be honest with you, because I think of the popular builds, right? The way that people are going to end up going with a guy, two guys potentially in the 10Ks or a guy in the nines and a guy in the tens. I think a lot of lineups are going to round out at the top end of here. And I think a lot of people end up going back to Herbert or to Keith Mitchell, or to Hotong, because the win is fresh in their mind. And it's really easier for me to fade those guys and stay away. But if I was going to throw out some names for guys to play, Hogard, we're getting a massive discount on him this week. He didn't play obviously that bad last week.
This is the bad Højgaard, right?
Yeah, you're right. This is Nikolai,
this is not Rasmus. Yeah,
you're right. This is
how is Nikolai in this tournament and Rasmus isn't in this tournament?
I don't know. It is weird because they're twin brothers. They both won on tour.
Yeah,
I don't know why
I don't get that.
That's a great point. Yeah. Scribner's another name. He's a good Euro player. His form
he played well last week.
Yeah, but his form coming in prior to this had not been great, but he did play well last week. Matthew Jordan made the cut last week, played in the Scottish decently. So, I think for me, if I'm going to lean down here, I'm definitely going to lean towards the Euro guys in the 6Ks, just because they've got more exposure playing here. Xander Lombard is another name of a guy who's played well on the DP World Tour.
The bad Xander.
Yeah, the bad Xander. Xander with a Z, not Xander with an X. Yeah. So, you could go Xander, and there you go. You've got quite the lineup. But, again, like we say, week after week, staying out of the dumpster as much as possible will be key. One guy who's not in the dumpster is actually in the 7K, but he's a late ad, and I'm curious to get your thoughts just because he's your boy. Tagala, 7,100.
I must have skipped over him in the graphic or something like that.
Well, he's not on my list because my list was made before he was added to the field.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In the field this week.
Yeah, I like him. I don't mind him. I don't know where his mind's at with blowing the Travelers a few weeks ago, but I think he's one of those boomer bust guys, man. He played well at the U.S. Open, or not the U.S. Open, the Memorial a few weeks ago. He's one of those guys that in a birdie fest, I don't mind. Why not? Yeah. He's my boy. I'll go to him.
Okay, one last guy. Again, late ad, not on the list in the 7Ks, even though they were in the 6s, but I want to get your take. It sounds like Aaron Wise is becoming a popular pick because of the wind narrative.
Yeah.
He is South African, even though he's a U.S. guy, but he is originally from South Africa.
He is? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know this either until reading about him, but I guess he was born in South Africa and then was raised in the States. But, Aaron Wise, like where I think he's 7,300 this week. Where do you think Aaron Wise is, and is he a guy you'll play?
Yeah, I like him. He's been pretty solid all year, and coming off of a good performance at Memorial a few weeks ago, I could definitely sprinkle some Aaron Wise in my 150. I don't think he'll make like a 20 build or 3 max build or anything like that, but 150 he can definitely make my player pool for sure.
So the last guys that I want to get your take on, and then you always have a guy that I've never heard of before in the low 6Ks that you're like, have you heard of? And I'm like, no. But three guys. So Zanotti, who was a popular guy last week, Fabrizio, former winner of this event at this field, Zach Johnson, and then, of course, your boy, Jahung Tom Kim, who almost won last week. Those 3 guys, are you playing them? Where do you think ownership ends up?
Zanotti, I'm in on. Kim, cautioned right now. Zach Johnson, I'm not going to play Zach Johnson. So
no ZJ.
No, ZJ. I'd rather, if I'm going to play an old guy in this range, I'd rather go to Sink at 6,800. I think he's a better just overall player than Zach Johnson, even though Zach Johnson's a defending champion here, I guess. But Zanotti, I'm definitely in on. I played him last week. Now, the Kim situation, I don't know how close you're paying attention to ownership and stuff like that right now, but it is very similar to the 7K range with Max Homa. He is gaining sick ownership right now. He's coming in almost 12 to 15% at 6,500. So it's very troublesome. It's very worrisome. I was all over him last week at 2% ownership or 3% ownership, whatever
We
he was.
both were.
Yeah, we both were. But this week at 15% ownership, especially in like high stakes tournaments, I'm a little scared. So am I going to play him? I haven't made that decision yet. I think I'd rather take a fraction of that ownership and play like Wyndham Clark right above him at 6,600, who played well last week also. But for Joo Hyung Kim at 6,500, he might be a full fade for me. At 15%, if you're going to fade Joo Hyung Kim just like Max Home in the 7K range, you can pretty much play anyone else. I think no one else is really garnering too much ownership. So for me, I like Haotong at 6,900. I like Keith Mitchell at 6,900. I like Lucas Herbert at 6,900. I even like Kevin Kisner, a guy I never play.
I hate Kiz.
I literally never play Kisner, but I think this course suits him pretty well. 6,900. I like all those guys there. Dropping down below that, I like KH Lee. I've been playing him all year. He's been pretty good to me all year. Stuart Sink, I don't mind at 6,800. Chris Kirk, I don't mind at 6,800. Fratelli, I don't mind at 16. There's a lot of names here that I like. Fratelli, Grillo, Harrington coming off of
Harrington's an interesting play. I think he's probably one of those guys that's going to catch some steam because, I mean, the guy's been playing fantastic.
Yeah, coming off of a senior U.S. Open champion. Yeah, major win. Probably not going to get super owned, but I mean, you can definitely play a little bit of Harrington. Yeah. He's won the Open Championship twice in his career. Sam Horsfield's a name I like. Keep going. Dean Burmester played well last week. 67.
Burmester. You hit it. Burmester and Thomas Detry are the two guys.
I was just about to say Thomas Detry myself.
Yeah, in that range that Tom Kim, like you can get Detry at 66 and Burmester at 67. And I think you're getting a much more proven Euro Tour player. And both those guys finished top 10 last week.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're going to fade the Joo Hyung Kim, Tom Kim ownership, I don't mind those plays right above him. Thomas Detry, Wyndham Clark, Dean Burmester, Matthew Jordan played well last week. So below Kim, not many names for me. Zanotti at 6,400. I like Richard Bland has been playing okay, but he's a live guy now, so I don't really know what that means. He's a name out there. John Catlin, who's an American that plays on the Euro Tour at 6,400. He's won a couple times on the Euro Tour, not bad. And the last name that I'm going to give you at the flat min, the guy that you don't know, or you might know, I don't know, but
I played him last week. If it's the guy you're going to mention,
that you played him last week,
I played him last week at $6,600. If it's the guy that you're going to mention.
Well, there's only one name there that I like, and it's Thurston Lawrence. Is that the guy?
I had him in 10% of my lineups last week. I had him of my 20. I had him in 2 lineups, and obviously made the cut, finished top 25.
Yeah, I had never heard of this guy until last week. I was like, who is this Thurston Lawrence guy? I did a little deep dive on him. He's playing pretty good. He actually has like top 25 finishes in Rolex Series events. Ended up playing him in a couple showdown lineups over the weekend. He paid it off. He was always in the 6K range. But at the flat min, $6,000, he's 53rd overall in your model. He's going to be in my player pool for sure. Thurston Lawrence at 6,000 flat min. If you're going to sit here and you're going to jam in Rory and Rahm and Xander at the top, throw in a little Thurston Lawrence and see what happens.
Right below him, David Law, both him, Thurston Lawrence, and David Law finished top 5 at the Irish Open. Both guys made the cut last week. Law, I think, finished like T50 or something like that. Obviously, Lawrence had a much better week finishing top 25. But I think either guy, Lawrence is going to get some ownership because of the fact that people are going to try and go.
He's not going to be more than like 1 or 2%, I don't think.
But I mean, if you don't want to play, like if there's multiple selections where you're going to need a guy in that low salary, like sprinkle some David Law if you're going to sprinkle Thurston Lawrence in there. Like I think you're getting basically the same caliber of guy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. He's good value at 6,000 flat min, 53rd overall in your model. If you're going to jam in the guys at the top, let's go with Thurston Lawrence.
I love the call. We're an hour and 15 minutes into it, but let's go ahead and get into our bets. My card this week, I'm going back to Spieth. I got a good number on him, and truth be told, which is why I listed it on here, the Xander number, the Neiman number, and the Homa number, those were numbers that I saw on Saturday during the tournament. I even text you guys. I'm like, there's no way these numbers hold up next week when the numbers go live. So I locked those in last week. Those are futures bets. So they're not your atypical week of bets I normally make, which is why the numbers are so good. And it's the only reason why I'm so heavily invested in those numbers. But Xander at 25, Lowry at 25, who I love, Louis at 33, Morikawa at 35. It's just, he gets over 30. It's an auto bet for me. And then rounding it out, Neiman, Homa, and then, of course, Mark Leishman. I don't think I'm going to do many other bombs. I'm so heavily invested in this card, which is pretty deep for me in terms of the number of guys that I have above, what I would consider traditional bets, which is sub 80. I don't have a lot of room to do a lot of other playing around, but I will save a little bit of money in my back pocket for some live bets this week. And for you, Rick, we've got some similarities, but obviously you're not afraid to venture into the bomb territory.
No, man, I love bombs. I got a little extra money in my account from hitting 3 out of 4 winners. We're gonna play some bombs, of course.
And again, if you're gonna follow anybody's card, follow Rick's, not mine.
Hopefully we can hit a winner together on Xander this week or Homa, I guess. But I didn't get the good number on Xander. I bet him this week after I got the money back in my account from hitting him last week. So I got Xander at 16-1. My pick to win this week, I think he's going to be my one and done play if I have him available. I'm not really sure. Is Cam Smith at 28-1. I did originally bet Shane Lowry, but I think I like the Cam Smith number better, especially because I think he's the better play this week. So I cashed out Lowry, bet Cam Smith at 28-1. I'm a sucker for Will Z, Tommy Fleetwood, and Neiman. I'd like all these guys. Fleetwood, I'm going to fade in DFS. I'm just going to bet him here. Same with Max Homa, fade him in DFS. Just bet him at 60-1. Louis at 50-1, I think is a pretty good number for him, especially being priced at 8,800 on DraftKings. And then my bombs will go with Leishman, Mito, Bobby Mack at 130, Peters at 130, Danny Willett at 150, Jordan Smith at 150, Ju Young Kim at 175, Patrick Harrington at 200, and my big bomb, who I think actually has a chance to win this week, potentially, Taylor Gooch, Live Guy, 200-1. I've even seen that number at 250-1 now in some spots. So if you can see a 250-1 on Taylor Gooch, I think that is way good value on that guy. So that's my card.
Yeah, no, I like the Gooch call. And truth be told, I bet Willett. It's actually, again, another bet that I have. I forgot to even add it to my card. I bet him at 150-1 when he won the Alfred Dunhill earlier in the year.
Oh, nice.
And so I locked him in for this event because I'm like, oh, they're going right back to this course. He won it. So I have a Willett ticket as same as you at 150, which is a futures bet from months ago when he won the Alfred Dunhill.
Yeah, I like that. Good call. Let's go, Danny. Let's go, Danny Willett. Go win your second major.
I know. How about Danny Willett could win 2 majors? That'd be so crazy. That'd
be crazy, yeah. But yeah, that's my card. Hopefully we hit a winner. I'm thinking about potentially adding Ty Hatton to the card, but I haven't really seen a number that I like on him. I think I'm just going to heavily invest on him on DraftKings instead of betting him.
Yeah, the only other guy that I might add is Cam Smith. Just hearing you talk about him and all the narrative.
Do it, man.
It just the number's good.
Ride the heater with me. Cam Smith's going to win the British Open this week.
I like the call. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. We're an hour and 18 in. Rick, thanks again, man. We pivoted off of yesterday. I appreciate you working with my schedule as I'm obviously not at home in a hotel on the East Coast. But remember to subscribe to the Nickel City Mafia channel, like, comment, and pass around the link. It all helps us. Thanks again for watching. Rick, appreciate it, man. Appreciate your time. And, dude, let's hit another winner. I'd love to hit one. The last one I hit was Scheffler. I'd love to hit another one this week.
Let's do it, man. All right. Good luck, everyone out there. Hope you take our advice and, like and subscribe to Nickel City Mafia.
Good luck this week, and we will see you next week.
All right.